Thank you all so much. Thank you to the elders. What a beautiful occasion. What an honor and a privilege. My name is Shamil Idriss. I'm the president of Search for Common Ground. At Search for Common Ground, we know that conflict is inevitable, but that violence is not. We make generation-long commitments to communities in conflict, and we work in partnership with them to apply a methodology and an approach that is proven to reduce violence and to restrict its spread and its devastating consequences. Today, the largest dedicated peace-building organization in the world with over 700 staff and thousands more volunteers and partners working in more than 30 countries. This year we were so honored to be nominated by the Quakers for the Nobel Peace Prize, and we're equally honored to be here with you this evening. We have 3 projects here from Nigeria, Yemen, and South Sudan recognized. I ran around and took pictures of every one of them because our teams are frontline teams who are risking so much, oftentimes their reputations, sometimes even their lives, to do this work in communities that are pulling them apart, are going to be so touched and moved. And I only regret that you have to have me here to represent them rather than them themselves, although we have one of them from Kenya who I will introduce in 1 second. We know now, the World Bank has said just 2 years ago, that the primary cause of poverty and suffering in the world is violent conflict. And yet we also know how to end violent conflict. We know this, and every one of the sparks of hope here and the hundreds of thousands more that are not here show us the pathway to do this. Now, I find it especially fitting that our 3 programs that are represented here today from Yemen, South Sudan, and Nigeria were largely developed and led and run by women and or young people. The 2 communities who are among the primary everywhere, but also among the most came to this land and was so inspired by the example of civil disobedience and nonviolence was also just 26. We know that young people are not just the leaders of tomorrow, but the leaders of today. And I will end my comments before introducing Judy by telling the story of one more young person. I am both moved and so saddened to dedicate for us this honor, not just to our 700 staff and thousands more volunteers and partners, but also to Jana Al-Makhtari. Jana was the daughter of Shoki Al-Makhtari, who runs our program in Yemen, who's been there on the ground with our teams throughout this horrible war. And our teams everywhere are always oriented to look for hope, because they understand the way to make change is not just to look for problems and solve them, but to look for hope and invest in it. And they found that in Yemen, despite the war, 95% of the schools remained open. So they went to the schools and have been developing extraordinary programming to reduce corporal punishment and other kinds of violence in the school system. Well, earlier this year, Shoki's daughter, Jana, just 7 years old, died. She died not as a direct result of the conflict, but as one of the millions of people who dies from conflict in these indirect ways, where she simply could not get the medical care that she needed and we could not get her out of the country for it. And so with this recognition, it's a reminder to me, and her life and her death is a reminder to all of us at Search for Common Ground, that this scourge of violent conflict must end. And the wonderful thing about being here with you all is that the sparks of hope remind us that we know how to end them. And with that, I want to introduce Judy Kamamo. Judy deserves a tree of her own. She runs the Search for Common Ground programming in Kenya. And when the government there was trying to deal with violence, with the Al-Shabaab attacks in the coastal areas, and they responded by shutting down essentially the fishing industry, it was Judy who stepped in and mediated between the local fishermen and the security forces, and eventually led to an agreement that opened up the fishing ports again for people to make their livelihood, but for also the security officials to do what they need to do. She's an inspiration to me, and with that, I'd like to welcome Judy to the stage. Thank you.